We're here with Sean T. Randolph to discuss his MFA show works.
Yes.
And I'm Laurie Switzer, for the record. Today is June-ish 2021.
Yes.
Post-pandemic, hopefully. And we've already had a little bit of pre-discussion about the work, but for the listener's sake, I think we should kind of start from scratch. So we're looking at what I believe is the first piece in the series, and we'll show it in conjunction with a visual.
Yes, it's technically the second chronologically, but maybe the banger, the kind of first piece I worked on in the series, but the second chronologically in the story.
So you made it first, but it's for the purpose of storytelling, it's the second.
Exactly.
Should we talk about the first one first?
No, we should talk about this one first.
Okay. Because you made it first.
Because I made it first, yeah.
And what prompted you to make this? You had previously done some large-scale drawings, like the one that's...
Yeah, the one that Laurie's referring to is a drawing titled M80 that was like a pretty direct reinterpretation of 17th or 18th century painting. I don't know, I would have to look back at the painting, but it was an old Julius Caesar painting of his assassination.
Wow.
And we can talk about that one a little bit, but I kind of got on this kick of looking at old paintings, and I had been really into these Noah's Ark paintings. Edward Hicks was one of the artists, and there are a couple more artists, but I kind of got into how each artist depicted Noah's Ark differently, because that was like a theme, it was something that lots of artists did, like a still life of sorts, but obviously
when
all
did that
imagined.
trend, was it a trend of...
No, it's been
in art
happening
history?
for a long time. Not necessarily. I think there was, just like a nativity scene or something. People have been doing it for a long time.
Doing the Noah's Ark story.
Yeah. So there was one particular, now I'd have to look at my notes to tell you what the painting was, but it was a painting of Noah's Ark that was really chaotic, like way less peaceful than the other ones, where the creatures were kind of taking over the scene and attacking the shipgoers, Noah.
This is a drawing that you did?
No, this is
a painting?
Yeah, a painting.
That you were...
That I was inspired by to make this particular drawing.
And is there a reason you didn't mimic the violence depicted in the painting that you...
Yeah, I kind of started it, and it ended up being more about the kind of variety and the mood of the animals. Once I started making it, it kind of evolved, and I had originally thought of making it kind of more violent or intense, but once I got into drawing these animals, I kind of got obsessed with making their expressions really, some of them are excited, but most of them are pretty stoic, and the people kind of became this off to the side type focus, where they're, Noah's up here praying to God or whatever to save them from these animals that are kind of running amok.
I would say the animals, many of them look pretty solemn, but maybe that's a general expression on your images in general. Your figurative, or would you not say that?
Yeah, I would say they kind of have a sad a sad look.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that comes from how I make the eyes. You know, the eyes are always kind of half open and usually kind of like canted down, like frowning. The eyes are kind of frowning.
I see. And so you were getting into the expression of the animals and just depicting the animals and the thought of representing any kind of the chaos or violence in the painting that this evolved from. That was kind of your attention was more drawn to the animals themselves.
Yeah, I was kind of pushed to the side. I think what really inspired me by in those paintings that I was looking at was more so the chaos than the violence, mm-hmm. and that's kind of what I wanted to get across.
I think you did, because when the viewer, I think people come, for me anyway, come to this painting or this drawing, and it's daunting because there's so much going on. They're almost overwhelming, and I've said before that I feel like they need to be displayed with a chair in front of them so that the viewer can really take their time and take in the details.
It's a bit of a mess. The only thing that's not messy is the kind of like, Joshua Tree, deserty background. This cheese wedge
That part's not
background.
messy? Why do you say that?
I would just say that it's like that's the only part that's like not full of birds and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's very much the foreground is taking over.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should add some details in that.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. So the foreground is very busy and there's a lot going on. And did you? I had some questions about your process. Did you sketch this out in advance, or was it just spontaneous? You kind of.
I sketched. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you do it? How much of it did you plan in advance?
I did sketch it all out in pencil at first, with probably I would say minimal erasing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I erase a lot, but in general, once I decide where something is, I kind of leave it and make it work. But it was kind of like I sketched out the boat where the boat was going to be at, and then the kind of horizon line. I think that's how I start a lot of drawings,
mm-hmm.
Like a kind of basic cartoon type thing where it's like, this is the space you have,
mm-hmm.
and then you add a background, and you create foreground by making layers. And it was like I knew I wanted to have this crane with the monkey working the crane and the elephant, so those things kind of got in first. And to create layers, I put these rocks and kind of added creatures after creatures, but
mm-hmm.
I took some photos as I worked, but
photos of the piece
as I worked
to just get a different perspective of what they look like.
Exactly, and where I could fit things in, and where how it would work for the composition, and things that I can see, like things that I can remember that were here first, where this elephant, this kind of fox that now has a toad on its head. These mice in the corner.
Toad on its head, where?
They're actually from another piece. It's like
kind
of sad-looking toad on the fox's head, and then the gorillas with the cat as a pet. Those are kind of the first things that went in, and then got filled in. And after I got the first couple animals in, it kind of became like, oh, what do I want to put in here? Because I either like the way it looks, or because it's something from Tucson, from the desert, that I was interested in incorporating, or from California that I was incorporating, like the condor and these things that are maybe not in those antiquated paintings and are kind of more of what I think of when I think of nature.
I see.
That's why there's a lot of coyotes and mountain lions and quadammundi, stuff that is from Tucson.
Nature.
Sean's nature, yeah.
And the interaction between the different animals, is that part of the story, or is that strictly whimsy and the playful? Not that I I think there's a lot of value to the whimsy in,
Yeah.
this piece. But
I
I'm
was-
just curious if there's more to that than I'm seeing.
I just wanted to create some kind. I wanted to create some kind of distinction between the people and the animals, but I wanted the animals to have, without being anthropomorphic, I wanted them to have some kind of like human qualities. You know what I mean? So that you felt this sense of relatability or something like that, which is why I gave the gorilla as a cat.
So let's go back to the what you were saying, the inspiration for the piece, and you said you had been looking at all these. It stemmed from the Julius Caesar paintings, and then a tradition of paintings representing Noah's Ark story, and you were inspired to kind of tell another slant or your version or a more contemporary version of the Noah's Ark story, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I kind of. Well, I started looking at these paintings because they're really kind of ridiculous. They're like, if you look at some of these things closely, there's like a lot going on, a lot of details that seem made up. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't know all the. That was the thing about these old paintings. It's like, oh, they didn't have a global view of. They hadn't seen a tiger in a zoo or something, so they like guessed what a tiger looked like. You know what I mean?
Based on a written description.
Based on a written description. So a lot of this like stuff is getting translated by way of drawing or painting or whatever. And so this isn't totally answering your question exactly, maybe in a roundabout way, but I think I was interested like what my interpretation of their interpretation of this Noah's Ark thing was. But I think more so what you're referencing is that I was making this during the pandemic, going into the
That's what I'm referencing. I was trying to get you to say it without saying it.
Yeah, going to the studio, under lockdown guidelines or whatever. It was like, oh, we could go for, I don't remember what it was, 2 hours or whatever, or 3 hours. It was more, I think it was like more 3 or 4 hours or something. It was like longer than you maybe just wanted to sit there for, but not long enough that you could like, you know what I mean, like get your juices flowing if you didn't have a plan. So I would have to go in there each time with kind of a plan, like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yowza.
And as I was working on this piece, that's when these other pieces started to come together and the kind of idea for the show started to come together. And the title of this piece is The Drawing of Muchness, which comes from Alice in Wonderland, which is a book that I revisit time and time again for the illustrations and the story. And I think it's I don't know exactly, but maybe the hare or something. Alice is talking to him and like asks her to create a drawing, and she says, what should I draw or something, and he says, a drawing of muchness.
Really?
Yeah. I might be getting that totally wrong, but this, when I finished it, felt like that because it sparked the rest of the show. It kind of encompassed this idea of muchness, that it was like extra, you know what I mean?
I'm not sure.
But by extra, I mean like something that's like a little bit too, you even said it earlier, that's like a little intense and crowded, you know? And I think if you were to read into it, this isn't totally my intention, but it's certainly there. If you read into it, you could think, this feeling of confinement that we have being, maybe represented by the ship with all these animals, and kind of uncertainty. When will the flood dissipate? When will we be done with this? You know, that feeling of kind of confinement and chaos and then release is maybe something that
I'm glad you were anticipating the release.
Well, yeah, to some extent.
This is the release? They're loading on or they're loading off?
That's another thing that's really